So I think the Naturium Multi-Peptide collection is probably one of the best, just affordable overall ranges on the market, especially if peptides are something that you're interested in. Plus, with Naturium in their global expansion era, it is a brand that is becoming a little bit easier to access. There are currently 4 products in the Multi-Peptide collection. There's a moisturizer and eye cream that kind of started it all. Then a couple of years ago now, they added a serum, and then more recently, they've added a rich cream. I'm going to talk through each of the individual products, probably with more focus on the moisturizer because it kind of forms the base of the collection. There is a little bit of an ingredient overlap, but not too much. And then I'll also touch on the serum and the new rich cream and what upgrades they've made there. So starting off with Multi-Peptide Moisturizer, and this is one of the first products I ever used from Naturium. This alongside their vitamin C complex were like true standout products and are the 2 that I still have in my rotation to this day. I'm pretty sure I tried Naturium maybe the end of 2020, maybe January 2021, thereabouts. And ever since that time, I've had these products in my rotation. To me, this is one of the most universally applicable and universally appealing moisturizers, or at least with the potential to be the most universally appealing. It has a soft cream texture that I actually find a little bit difficult to describe. With lots of other moisturizers, you tend to notice a little bit more of an oily feel, or some of them are more gelled, so they're like a gel cream. This is just like a true cream that is straight down the middle. It feels quite pillowy with an amazing glide. The dry down is also very neutral. It's not a flat matte, but definitely not glowy either. So this is what I mean by universal. Both the texture itself to apply is neither too oily nor too jelly, and the dry down is pretty much as natural as it gets. It's the kind of product that I think people who aren't like obsessed with skincare would really enjoy, because it doesn't really interfere or change the context of your natural skin appearance too much. Probably the only comment I'll make is that potentially if you have super dry skin, it might not be rich enough, and that could be why they actually ended up bringing out a rich cream. In terms of ingredients, this moisturizer is truly packed, and I think that's why it offers such great value. If you're somebody that wants like a truly simplified routine, realistically this could almost act as a serum and moisturizer as well. In terms of the call out ingredients, Naturium touts a multi-peptide blend, encapsulated ethylated ascorbic acid, and also panthenol. But instead of just talking about the surface claims, I wanted to maybe expand on this a little bit more. At the top of the ingredient deck, there's a bunch of skin-loving ingredients to start. So we've got glycerin, dimethicone, jojoba oil, squalane, and even a little bit of niacinamide. So there's no wonder that this is constructed so well, because the base of the product is pretty much as good as it gets. Before I keep going with the rest of the ingredient discussion, I just wanted to mention that it is difficult to go through an inky list and try and decipher the actual ingredients that are being used. We often see ingredients as single like phrases or words, but typically when a brand is buying something, they're buying what's called a trade name in the industry, and that's often a combination of ingredients that form together to create the ingredient. So if we say like the word Matrixyl 3000, for example, that's not one thing, it's multiple ingredients blended together. And so going through the inky list is hard because you're kind of guessing or trying to piece together these ingredients to see what trade name or what actual ingredient they're using. And many of these things are sold by multiple different suppliers, some in isolation, some in blends. So I hope that makes sense. Like as I go through this inky list, this is just me guessing what actual trade names or what actual ingredients they're using. Naturium tends to go to the source, so they don't cut a lot of corners. But in any case, I've not asked them for any of this information. This is just what I've tried to do myself. And it takes a long time. It took me hours to actually go through these inky lists to try and piece these things together. Because I'm not a cosmetic chemist, I'm not able to identify them by name. I literally have to search for every single line manually. So yeah, just mentioning this, forgive me if anything is wrong. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if I've mistakenly linked things together, but I've truly done my best to ensure that I've got the right complexes. And the other thing to mention is that nearly all the claims that I'll make about the ingredients come from the ingredient supplier. Naturium is much more like simplified and surface level. They really don't go to as much detail as what the suppliers do. Okay, with all of those like disclaimers out of the way, let me move on to the rest of the inky list, starting with a feature peptide called palmitoyl tripeptide 5. This peptide is typically known as Syncol, and the peptide is thought to have collagen-boosting properties by mimicking the body's naturally occurring mechanism of activating a latent growth factor. This growth factor is known to be a contributing factor to collagen synthesis. Palmitoyl tripeptide 5 is actually also thought to prevent the degradation of existing collagen, and this is done by inhibiting an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Now, this is where it does get a little bit confusing, because when you see palmitoyl tripeptide 5, it's typically referring to Syncol, but Naturium have also included an algae extract in the name I'll throw up on the screen. This algae is available as a trade name ingredient with palmitoyl tripeptide 5, so they're kind of sold together in a complex. And those two ingredients together form a trade name ingredient called Syn-Eye, essentially a combination of ingredients that target the eye contour for expression lines. So the peptide itself is still having an action on collagen. It's just, I'm unclear on whether Naturium are using Syncol or Syn-Eye. It doesn't really matter because both of them are considered anti-aging ingredients. I just found it interesting because it makes me think that maybe Naturium started formulating their eye cream first and then adapted the formula to make it into a moisturizer, and that's why they would have the and that's why they would be using the eye complex. But it's possible that they're using Syncol here and then a separate algae extract in another trade name ingredient. So that same algae is also available in a trade name ingredient called IBR Solage, and that algae is blended with jojoba oil, which is also an ingredient featured in this formula. The claims around IBR Solage relate to its ability to fight signs of glycation, apparently by inhibiting and removing advanced glycation end products. You might have seen like the phrasing AGEs thrown around. It's part of this whole like anti-aging phenomenon. And so as you can see, because this product contains ingredients that could potentially be both of these complexes, it's hard to know what Naturium actually is using and therefore what claims they could be making. In any case, this algae is present, so I assume even if it's technically not the Solage ingredient, it's likely that algae itself has some sort of action on glycation. I hope that's not too confusing. I feel like I'm just speaking around in circles because it's truly not that relevant. Naturium don't make claims about this anyway, but this is just more so deciphering an inky list is sometimes fun and trying to find like what ingredients brands are actually using, because then you know what the value is of the product. Anyway, moving on to the next two peptides, we have palmitoyl tripeptide 1 and palmitoyl tetrapeptide 7. Generally, when you see these peptides featured together, it means the brand is using a very well-known peptide complex known as Matrixyl 3000. I don't believe Naturium names Matrixyl 3000 in the write-up of the moisturizer. From what I understand, brands have to pay to use trade names, so often there's really no need considering they're actually calling this product a peptide product. It's maybe unlikely that consumers are able to identify Matrixyl anyway, but I'm going to assume they actually are using the real Matrixyl 3000. I'm fairly sure they name drop it in the eye cream, so does it make sense that they'd use the genuine Matrixyl 3000 there and not here? And Matrixyl 3000 is probably the gold standard peptide. Matrixyl is now a family of peptides. The original Matrixyl is still around. Matrixyl 3000 was sort of adapted after that. I'm pretty sure one of the large conglomerates had like an exclusivity on it, so they developed two, and then they developed a third and even a fourth. So there's a lot of Matrixyl peptides around. Matrixyl 3000 is probably the one that you will see most often because it's been around, I think, for decades at this point. And in terms of its target action, Matrixyl 3000 is known to help reduce the visible signs of chronological aging, and interestingly also sun damage or like damage from sun exposure. The Matrixyl 3000 peptides are naturally mimic peptides released from the extracellular matrix, and these are known as matrikines. If you've been in the skincare community for a while, you probably have already heard of this like general mechanism of action for Matrixyl 3000, and it's often described as if with these peptides we're applying like a fragment of a macromolecule, and that kind of tricks the skin into thinking there's like a broken wound or like damaged segment of collagen in your skin. This then triggers triggers a cascade of repair responses, which in turn results in enhanced collagen production as well as fibronectin and hyaluronic acid. Another interesting point that's more recently come about within the well-aging, anti-aging space is the accumulation of zombie cells known as senescence. It's also now thought that Matrixyl 3000 is also involved in regulating the expression of progerin, which is a senescence marker known to accumulate with age. Next up in the Multi-Peptide Moisturizer is actually a naturally occurring source of peptides from Sacha Inchi. This ingredient has been processed in a way to make these natural peptides more bioavailable and are now considered to be signaling peptides that potentially have an action on skin firmness and elasticity, and are also known to improve skin smoothness. So essentially, Naturium are combining a natural source of peptides with synthetics like Matrixyl 3000 to form like a well-rounded formula. Now, moving away from the peptides directly, Naturium have also included an encapsulated ethylated ascorbic acid, and this is done using a niasomal vesicle, which purportedly increases bioavailability. So we already know that ethylated ascorbic acid is more stable than typical ascorbic acid, but having it encapsulated in this way further stabilizes it, but also means that the delivery of the vitamin C is probably going in a little bit deeper and a bit more targeted than it otherwise would. This complex of ethylated ascorbic acid also includes some magnolia extracts, and these are thought to have their own antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Multi-Peptide Moisturizer also includes a bunch of texture-enhancing ingredients, and I think that's what gives it this quite unique velvety skin feel, and it has a mild soft focus effect, so in some ways it could be considered a primer as well. The phrasing that Naturium uses to describe this moisturizer is that it's nutrient dense, and I think that's actually a really great description. It highlights so many different ingredients in a very simple to use format that even if you're not a skincare enthusiast, it's just extremely easy and pleasant to use, but you're unknowingly getting niacinamide, vitamin C, like hydrators and all of these peptides as well. Over time, newer peptides have come out, but I would say Matrixyl 3000 and even Syncol are two of the like long-standing ones. So it's really nice to see them in such an affordable product, because once upon a time, having Matrixyl 3000 was like a big deal. Moving on to the Multi-Peptide Eye Cream. These came out around the same time, if not exactly the same time. The eye cream actually used to come in a little jar pot and then was transitioned into a tube. Nearly everything I said about Multi-Peptide Moisturizer also applies to Multi-Peptide Eye Cream. There is quite a lot of crossover with these two products. The texture to me is a little bit different. The eye cream is maybe slightly pasty, and that does help with a little bit more of a specific application around the eye contour. It doesn't have quite as much slip and glide as the moisturizer does. However, just because it feels more pasty to start with, it does ultimately melt down very easily and ends up feeling quite buttery on the skin. Ingredients wise, the formulas are also quite similar. The main difference is that the eye cream seems to have been simplified slightly, so the niacinamide has been removed and the ethylated ascorbic acid has been taken out as well. So instead of those two original ingredients, Naturium have added an additional peptide here, and that peptide is Argireline Amplified. Argireline Amplified, and even the original Argireline, is known to be a peptide designed to target expression lines more specifically. So anything dynamic where you've got a lot of movement in your face, so it makes sense that we would see an Argireline peptide around the eye contour, especially as you're more likely to see fine lines and wrinkles developing there first. The mechanism of action and claims around Argireline Amplified versus the original Argireline are quite similar. From what I understand, the amplified version just has a slightly smaller molecular size, and that makes it more readily bioavailable. And the lower molecular size likely means that it's able to permeate skin a little bit better. Moving on to the Naturium Multi-Peptide Advanced Serum, and this is a bit of an evolution now of the original multi-peptide products. This maybe has a slightly more modern approach to the peptides and even a lot of focus on antioxidant protection. There's not much overlap between the serum and moisturizer, so you can definitely use them together if you'd like, and that way you're kind of capturing a breadth of different ingredients, or even one in the morning, one at night potentially. The serum version, in terms of its like key peptide, actually focuses on Argireline Amplified like the eye cream. As discussed in the the eye cream section, Argireline Amplified is supposed to function best on like dynamic or expression lines. So that could even involve things like the forehead and maybe even the nasolabial folds and really anywhere your face is moving constantly. It's actually known to be like a Botox-like peptide. So although we know that nothing is going to act the same way as an actual injectable, Argireline has been around for many years and it still holds status as a Botox-like peptide. So I think it probably stands to reason there's some level of efficacy that we're getting from these effects. Argireline is thought to target the snare complex, specifically targeting SNAP25. Blocking this interaction supposedly leads to lower muscle contraction, which is what leads to these Botox-like results. And they are quite lofty claims, and the supplier of Argireline Amplified is actually starting to market it more as an ingredient that helps to prolong or boost the lifespan of injectables. So I think, going off very vague memory, so forgive me if I'm misquoting, but I think their claims are it extends the time between injections by 8 weeks. So if you're somebody that already gets Botox, for example, potentially by using a product with Argireline Amplified, you're then able to get those injections less frequently. Beyond Argireline Amplified, Naturium have also added encapsulated copper peptides to this formula, and also encapsulated ferulic acid, as well as hydrolyzed vegan collagen. I believe the form of encapsulated copper peptides they're using is known as X50 anti-aging solution. It's again essentially thought to help increase the production of collagen and elastin. But the reason why this particular complex is special is it's known as having like drone technology. The supplier sort of claims that the encapsulation they use means that the ingredient is able to have a more targeted effect in the skin and also a more sustained effect over time. I've always wondered if this version of copper peptides is similar to the typical one that we see in like the blue serums. From what I've been able to find, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but it seems like the blue copper serums or serums that use the copper tripeptide one, they probably have a better reputation for skin healing and regeneration. Whereas this version of copper peptides in the X50, because it's such a targeted action, the focus is probably more so on lines and wrinkles. The ferulic acid that Naturium uses in this product is also encapsulated, and Naturium as a brand loves to use encapsulation, which is actually really cool and great, especially considering the price points are so good. Encapsulation just means that the stability is usually much better and there's much less chance of interaction. So the product is probably remaining more stable actually in the jar over long term, but it also means that there's less concern when you're layering, not only from an irritation perspective, but just from like a stability perspective. The serum does have a little bit of a smoky scent, like smoky metallic, and I think that scent probably comes from the ferulic acid, which even though it's encapsulated, I guess is still able to give off its scent profile. I do find the scent in this is much less than a lot of vitamin C serums that use ferulic acid. So I find it totally fine and tolerable. It doesn't linger, but just mentioning in case you're very scent sensitive. In terms of this encapsulated version of ferulic acid, the supplier claims they're able to increase the delivery of ferulic acid into the epidermis by 472%, thus allowing for enhanced activity and better antioxidant protection. This is against things like UV rays, infrared, and it also means that there is sustained activity across the day. The last call out ingredient in this serum is hydrolyzed vegan collagen. Unfortunately, with this one, I couldn't interpret the ink list properly, or I wasn't able to find the source supplier, so I'm not exactly sure what claims are available around this version of the hydrolyzed collagen. Collagen has such a generic inky name that it is very difficult to isolate and find where it belongs. So I'm unclear if this version of collagen that they're using is simply like a film forming humectant ingredient, or if it has any level of signaling potential. In any case, I would say this is probably my favorite product from Naturium. It has a milky emulsion texture that feels light but still quite moisturizing. As I've said a million times before, I'm a layerer, so I like things to have their own texture, but not be too overwhelming that it blocks other products from working well. And this I think strikes the right balance of being like quite skin plumping, skin smoothing, but still I can use anything else I want along with it. Now, funnily enough, the amount of DMs that I personally received about this product is like a lot. I've had some people tell me that when they started using this serum, they only used it for like a month or two, and it completely transformed the texture on their skin. So I haven't personally had like such transformative effects with it, but I do find it very skin smoothing and plumping. So I think if you've never used like a hydrating peptide product like this before, it could be like it could definitely be something to try. One person even said that one of their friends thought they'd actually had Botox, which, you know, I don't know, but anyway, the potential is there, and I think this serum is using maybe 2% Argireline Amplified, so it's quite a good dose. Just going back to my personal routine, more recently I started integrating the Medicate Liquid Peptides Advanced MP. To me, the Medicate product is that little bit more modern again. It's using it with newer ingredients, newer technologies. So the way that I kind of balance it out, because Medicate is so expensive, and because I love this Naturium product so much, I actually use Naturium and Medicate to stretch out each other. So sometimes I'll go a week, just use the Medicate, and then I'll do a week with the Naturium, or I might do a couple of days Naturium, a couple of days Medicate. But because Naturium is significantly more affordable, but it still has a lot of key peptides and actives, I kind of figure that I'm getting the best of both worlds while not having to repurchase a more expensive product so often. As a summary, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think for the price point, Naturium has absolutely nailed it. Moving on to the Multi-Peptide Rich Cream. This is the latest addition to the Multi-Peptide collection. I guess the main feature of this product is that I'm pretty sure it's a water in oil emulsion, which is different to a lot of moisturizers out there that are typically an oil in water emulsion. This doesn't really matter too much. It just means that the textural experience, the sensorial experience is quite different. A water and oil emulsion tends to feel quite a bit richer, definitely more emollient, and has an almost like barrier-like feeling on the skin. This of course differs by formulation. They don't all feel the same, but I would say generally water and oil emulsions are just a bit heavier to use. This Naturium Rich Cream is also quite interesting because within this emulsion setup, there's a water break that occurs that is far more obvious than I've experienced before. So when you apply some of the product, the first thing that you feel is sort of this creamy texture, the way that it looks like in the jar. But then when you start to apply it, you can actually actively feel this burst occur. And it's like you get this like quick hit of hydration where you can almost like literally feel the water coming through. And then it returns to this emollient, oilier texture. And as you continue to rub it in, it just develops into this rich cream, as the name suggests. The sensation is quite unusual, and when I first tried it, it was a little bit odd. I didn't know what to think. But as I've continued to use it, it's grown on me a lot, and I quite enjoy the experience. While this is definitely a rich cream, it's not so heavy that it can't be used across skin types. It's just potentially like if you're oily or congestion prone like me, I wouldn't be able to get away with it in the morning, but it's totally fine in the night. As far as the peptides go, Naturium have included a different combination. I'm pretty sure the peptide they're using in this is known as Bellativa Golden Matrix. An interesting name. Basically, this is doing something very interesting, and it's conjugating what used to be known as the original Matrixyl peptide, but they're adding or mixing it in with gold particles and also a centella extract. This seems to be very new on the market, so I wasn't able to find too many details about it. But anything that's stabilizing peptides more, allowing for more sustained delivery in the skin and basically protecting the molecule is always a good thing. This would in turn enhance its collagen boosting properties. In the Rich Cream, instead of using the X50 copper peptides, this actually uses the traditional copper tripeptide one, also known as GHK-CU. I'm unclear if there's like an ideal dose of this type of copper peptide because this moisturizer is not blue, whereas we're used to seeing a lot of blue serums around when the concentration is maybe around that 1% plus. But often peptides function at a very low percentage, so even something like 0.1% is sufficient for a copper peptide. I just don't know if results vary based on dose. As I mentioned earlier, this type of copper peptide tends to be known to have more of an overall like global rejuvenating effect. So it can help with skin tone, reducing fine lines, but also things like redness, elasticity, firmness, and barrier repair. But again, this seems to be maybe in a lower dose, so I'm still unclear on how much is included. The Rich Cream also includes the encapsulated ferulic acid, which I discussed during the serum portion of this video. That same ferulic acid is repeated here. So, and I guess that's giving an additional antioxidant boost. but ferulic acid is also known to help with collagen and elastin. Rounding out this formula is a linseed extract. I'm also not exactly sure which supplier they're using for their linseed specifically, but this ingredient is mostly known to have an hyaluronic acid-like effect, where it has high water absorbing capacity and just enhances skin plumpness. So that's basically a summary of the products individually. I hope I've made sense and clarified some of the differences and similarities they have. I thought I'd just quickly include like a how to pick section. This is obviously so personal, but I'll just run through some general like tips. These products do have a certain level of overlap where they're all targeting peptides to help with lines, wrinkles, and plumpness. So potentially you could just pick one and be fine with that. It's just hard to know which peptide will work the best. I'm of the belief that having like a combination or medley of ingredients is probably the best action, but you just have to consider the context of your own skincare routine. If you're already using Matrixyl somewhere else, then you might not need Matrixyl here. Therefore, you might most benefit from Argireline, for example. But these products are also different enough to where if you are wanting to use multiple of them, you're really not overlapping on the key actives very much. In terms of choosing more specifically, I think the classic Multi-Peptide Moisturizer is the best all-rounder and probably the most universal product. And as I said earlier, I think it's the one to use if you really want to just simplify your routine, because you could definitely just cleanse, use Multi-Peptide Moisturizer, apply sunscreen, and that could be your entire routine in the morning done. It's the easiest to integrate, and you're ticking a lot of other boxes because it contains niacinamide and the vitamin C as well. With all that said though, because the texture of this is so neutral, I do think that it works best in the morning. So it may not be rich enough for most people to use as a night cream, but that's just the kind of thing where it depends on how high maintenance you are with textures. The Advanced Serum is my favorite because I think you can go anywhere in your routine, and to me it's the most hydrating and most skin plumping with the most obvious skin smoothing effect. It can be layered with pretty much anything, can be used morning or night, but I would say because Argireline Amplified, targets expression lines and the included ferulic acid has the antioxidant benefit, it probably stands to reason that the serum also would function best in the morning. So this would be something to explore, for example, if maybe you are somebody that wants to skip a moisturizer, so you could cleanse, use the Multi-Peptide Advanced Serum, then just go ahead with sunscreen, and that could be a simplified routine there. Or conversely, you could use the serum with your existing favorite moisturizer on top. The eye cream is probably the most simplified formula of what's available in the Multi-Peptide collection because it does target expression lines around the eye contour, but there is a little bit of overlap with the ingredients from both the moisturizer and serum. So potentially the eye cream would be good to use if the other products don't interest you so much, or maybe as like a first anti-aging product to use around the eye contour specifically. And of course, the eye cream can be used both morning and night. And finally, as the name suggests, the Multi-Peptide Rich Cream does have a richer texture, so it's probably best suited to dry or dehydrated skin types. I specifically use it in the evening, but it could also be considered just like a thicker barrier repair moisturizer of sorts. So I think if you have chronically dehydrated dry skin, there's also definitely no harm in using this in the morning. It just has like a more noticeable skin feel where it doesn't maybe lend itself to layering as much, but that's very user dependent, and it just depends on how many layers you use and what textural preferences you have. I would say the scent of this is also not the best, probably related to the ferulic again, but just mentioning that in case you are scent sensitive. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope I've captured most of the detail and key talking points. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.